Welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking issue 248 of The Continent, and let me tell you, we are looking at a massive continent-wide ripple effect. We're going to dive right into how overlapping global forces, from, Facebook's digital algorithms to shifting climate zones to modern economic paradigms, are all colliding in real time to reshape Africa. This isn't just a rundown of isolated headlines. We're really digging into the deep underlying currents that are driving them.
Okay, let's dive into this. Here is our roadmap for today. First, the truth about Suda. Second, climate shifts and health crises. And third, we're rethinking Africa's economic future. All right, part one, the truth about Suda.
Just take a look at the staggering scale of this event. In less than 2 days, an estimated 72,000 people crossed from Morocco into the Spanish-administered enclave of Ceuta. Now, these are exactly the kinds of striking, visceral images that immediately flash around the world, and they're very often picked up by anti-immigrant narratives in the West to just paint this picture of absolute chaos. But if we zoom out from those dense crowds on the beach for a second and take a breath, we really have to ask, what invisible forces actually triggered this sudden, massive movement of people? It wasn't just a random surge. It was this highly complex, perfect storm of local frustration, geopolitical maneuvering, and crucially, the digital world. Because here is where the mechanics of the modern world really take over. The initial spark, it wasn't physical. It was entirely digital. It actually started with a misreported Spanish Supreme Court ruling on July 8th. That ruling was twisted and taken completely out of context to portray the Spanish border as being legally open. And that false information spread like wildfire. It was pushed through tight-knit mobilization on WhatsApp groups managed from places like Algeria and Spain. Then, Facebook's algorithmic amplification took over, pushing viral content, including literally completely fake videos of swimmers easily reaching the enclave, straight into the daily feeds of frustrated, hopeful youth. And this brilliantly illustrates the danger of our digital echo chambers. As media expert Maria Abdali points out, social media platforms are fundamentally designed to just keep showing you more of what you engage with, right? So when it comes to migration, this creates a highly selective, success-only portrayal. The harsh realities, the drownings, the arrests, the brutal conditions along the route, they're largely scrubbed from the feed because they simply don't generate that same positive engagement. It creates this false, risk-free mental image that makes reaching a place like Ceuta seem not just possible, but easy.
But what's really interesting about this slide is the geopolitical chessboard hiding right behind those digital rumors. You have Morocco, which seeks recognition over Western Sahara and actually has a history of relaxing its border controls as a form of diplomatic leverage. Then you have Spain, which swiftly forced 70,000 people back while simultaneously trying to navigate these incredibly delicate negotiations for natural gas to keep its own economy running. And finally, you have Algeria, which is Morocco's fierce regional rival and, you guessed it, a critical supplier of that exact natural gas to Spain. So when you overlay those viral digital rumors with this incredibly tense geopolitical standoff, the sudden crisis at Ceuta makes a whole lot more sense.
Okay, moving to part two, climate shifts and health crises. We often talk about climate change in the abstract, right? Like it's some distant future problem. But on the continent, it is triggering immediate, highly localized public health emergencies today. Look at this fascinating, albeit pretty alarming, contrast. The malaria parasite needs very specific temperatures to thrive inside a mosquito, usually peaking right around 25 degrees Celsius. But thanks to global warming, parts of West and Central Africa are actually becoming too hot for the parasite. As temperatures push past 34 degrees, it physically breaks down the parasite's life cycle. But on the flip side, historically cooler, high-altitude regions in southern and East Africa are warming up. They are transforming into dangerous new breeding grounds for mosquitoes. The geography of disease is literally shifting beneath our feet, putting new regions, ones that don't have the historical health infrastructure or built-up immunity, squarely in the danger zone.
And it's not just the climate that's shifting, it's public trust. This political cartoon captures a very real sentiment on the ground right now in the Democratic Republic of the Congo. As a new strain of Ebola spreads, locals are becoming incredibly wary of what they call the Ebola business. This growing perception that foreign entities are prioritizing profit, funding, and research data over actual human lives. There is a deep-seated suspicion toward outside support. And epidemiology teaches us one absolutely crucial lesson. When the local community doesn't trust the medical response, containing any outbreak becomes exponentially harder.
So the crucial point is this devastating statistic right here. In this current outbreak of the Bundi Bujo strain of Ebola in the DRC, children are bearing the absolute brunt of it.
While kids make up about 25% of the confirmed cases, they account for a shocking 33% of the deaths. It's a heartbreaking reality, and it's one that is heavily compounded by severe disruptions in childhood immunizations and just basic everyday healthcare in the epicenter of the outbreak. Plus, right now, clinical trials for a vaccine specifically targeting this unique strain are only in their very, very early phases.
Which brings us to part 3, rethinking Africa's economic future. I want to introduce you to a provocative paradigm shift from Zambian economist Grieve Chelwa. He argues that we really need to look at economics not just as technical math and interest rates, but as a deeply political issue. As he puts it, debt in the modern era is a tool of neocolonialism and an instrument of control. He argues that the structural adjustment programs of the past few decades, where international loans came with very strict political and economic strings attached, they didn't just fix economies. They basically gave outside powers direct access to African policymaking. His solution? A collective, united front of refusal, essentially asserting true economic sovereignty from the ground up.
So let's look at how this idea translates into real-world actions taken just this week by nations asserting their independence in different ways. The DRC, for instance, has immediately banned the export of unrefined copper and cobalt concentrates. Their goal is clear: force international companies to process those minerals locally and keep the value-add profits inside the country. Over in West Africa, Guinea has opted out of the planned 2027 single currency launch. They made a highly calculated choice that joining with a weak production base would risk their long-term economic stability. Meanwhile, in Zambia, citizens are heading to the polls, intensely weighing the daily realities of debt restructuring, inflation, and the cost of living under President Hakainde Hichilema. These are all sovereign, highly consequential choices being made in real time.
Which brings us to our final thought for today. From the digitally field borders of Ceuta to the shifting malaria zones, all the way to the rejection of raw mineral exports, the continent is navigating incredible overlapping complexities. But as we reflect on Chelwa's call for solidarity, we have to step back and ask, what does true African economic sovereignty actually look like in a neoliberal world? Can a united front fundamentally change the balance of global power? It's a profound question to leave you with, and one that is absolutely going to shape the decades to come. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer. Keep asking those tough questions, and I'll catch you next time.